Yeah. So my mom, she had told me from that moment that she would never support me and that I should not ask her for help if I ever do decide to walk that path. So when I did become pregnant, she was just like, okay, like no excitement. In fact, she said, I feel sorry for your kids because you denied them of a father.
Hey, it's Jamila. We're on our Memorial Day break this week in the US, and we are also celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. This felt like exactly the right moment to revisit one of my favorite conversations from season one. We've been talking all season about financial, social, identity, and emotional safety nets that we tend to organize our lives around. Connie Rutherford, who is Black and Taiwanese, disrupted all of that when she decided to become a single mother by choice. She made a choice that her family, her culture, and even society doesn't have a script for. My takeaway: there is no wrong way to become the person you've always wanted to be. We'll be back with brand new episodes for season two starting next Tuesday, June 2nd. We have stories coming about healing from religious identity, rejecting eldest daughter syndrome, becoming a teen mother, leaving the military, and so much more. But first, Connie, let's be honest. Life would be a whole lot easier if it came with a checklist or my favorite, a spreadsheet. Do this by 25, achieve this by 40. But we all know life doesn't work that way. This is Unpopular Decisions, where we're having honest conversations about the courage it takes to stop following the script. I'm your host, Jamila Calhoun. Today's conversation is about choosing motherhood without waiting for permission, the right timing, or even the right partner to arrive first. I'm joined by Connie Rutherford, the author of Searching for Tadpoles, a deeply honest memoir about her journey to becoming a single mother by choice. If you're someone who's questioning, am I being too selfish or am I running out of time? This episode is for you. Let's get into it. Well, welcome in, Connie. I'm so excited for you to be on Unpopular Decisions. Just already been so inspired by your story and your book, Searching for Tadpoles. So grateful that you're here.
Well, thank you for having me, Jamila.
Before we dive into it, I'd love to have you introduce yourself and your unpopular decision to the audience.
Hi, I'm Connie Rutherford, and my unpopular decision is that I decided in 2020, at the age of 41, to become a single mother by choice.
Wow, that's so powerful. Going through this journey with that particular timeline, I'm sure had quite a bit of impact on you. Well, we said this is an unpopular decision. So, what made you feel like it was unpopular at the time that you were doing it? Was it particular people you were afraid of being judged by or disappointing?
I think just the traditional values of society, there's a natural trajectory, right? It's like you go to high school, then go to college, and then hopefully either you go to work or you find someone, you get married, and then you have kids, and then it's like the whole meeting your prince, and you have the 2.5 kids and a white fence and a dog, right? That's just what's known. But when you talk about who or there are people that I was afraid of offending or letting down, and definitely the first two people in mind, my parents. They're they're extremely traditional. And so I knew my dad, he's Black, he's military, and he's a devout Catholic. So all those things together, like it means traditions. And my mom is from Taiwan. And so she's also very traditional. In fact, their beliefs are more just like fate. It's either fate that you meet someone and you get married and you have kids, or maybe their fate is that you don't meet anyone. And it's okay. You're just happy to be happy.
Right.
Yeah, neither one were actually happy when I told them that I was pregnant.
The choice around family formation is both personal, it's your immediate family, but it's also society at large. And so
Yes.
those different sets of eyes on you throughout making this decision must have been incredibly difficult. As much as we like to say there's a lot of change in society, people are becoming a lot more open to different types of families. There was a recent study in 2021 that still showed that almost 50% of Americans still feel like a single mother raising children is not good for society. And
Mhm.
that is incredibly difficult because at the same time we know that the number of single mother households is growing considerably.
I was on Wall Street, so I was concerned about the stigma. Like, I worked a lot of hours and I was just thinking, I don't want this to be a quote unquote crutch, right? Like, I need special accommodations because if I decide to go down this road, I am a single mom and it's like, how am I going to do this? And then, like again, how am I going to balance and what are they going to think of me, right? It's that stigma like, oh, did she just get knocked up? And it's okay if you do get knocked up. I was trying for the longest to just get knocked up,
Would
but
be a little bit cheaper, right?
it would have been a much cheaper way. But being in a predominantly white environment and being a woman and then a woman of color, it's like I have to prove my worth more so, right? I have to work,
Yeah.
like 200%, to put in 200% instead of just 100%, right? So adding that on, I just wasn't really sure. But at the end of the day, you always have to think about your own happiness and what is it that you really truly want to pursue.
Absolutely. The workplace still isn't really fully accommodating to mothers in general, let alone someone who's a single mother and a single mother by choice. So it makes sense that that was in the back of your head and that you were nervous about that. You also mentioned your family being a part of some of the initial challenge in feeling that this choice would be accepted. There's a story you told that, at least to me, felt all too familiar. It's a story in your book about your mom finding your diary once when you were young.
Yes.
Can
Yes.
you tell us that story? And again, I say it's familiar because I literally feel like I had this scene
That same
happen in my
experience?
own
Yeah.
life with
Right,
my
right,
nosy
right.
mom.
From that time in 16, I always wanted to be a mom. I had friends that would think about like getting married and they would say, I already know I want my colors to be pink and silver and I want this type of ring and all this. And I'm just doodling baby names. And yeah, so that's probably what she read and she kind of thought like, is she having sex? Is she pregnant?
It sounded like she had a pretty strong reaction to the idea of you potentially being pregnant and that
Oh,
not being
yes.
allowed in
Yeah, it
the
was not
household.
allowed. No,
Yeah.
both of my parents said that if I did become pregnant, that I would be kicked out, and I believe them. I mean,
Wow.
now as a parent, I wonder if they really would. I doubt it. You never know. But
Uh,
so that was because I believed it, I was always so scared and fearful of the consequences.
yeah. No, and again, it just really highlights how incredibly brave and transformative your ultimate decision is to become a single mother by choice, coming from the fact that, growing up with this fear of getting pregnant and being that person who, might be, not a good girl according to your
Ex
parents, to now really making that choice to step into your own truth. So I think that story just struck me for just how much growth you probably had to experience in order to go from there to
Yes.
where you ultimately ended up.
And then at some point, as adults, we're always going to be our parents' kids, right? But I think that we have to also own our happiness and just know that we have to live with our own choices, right? So, like for me, I mean, I always wanted to be a mom, right? Like at age 16, and if I didn't do this, it would be like a huge regret of mine. My parents don't have to live with this regret. I would, and I would hold on to this for the rest of my life if I didn't
Yeah.
pursue it.
Yeah. One of the reasons that I even was inspired to do this podcast came from a quote I heard from Abbott Elementary, where Mr. Johnson says, I'd rather live with consequences than live with regret. And I think it speaks exactly
Perfect.
to what you're talking about, Connie. I had a moment where I was on the brink of trying to make a big decision, and I started to completely reframe what would I regret 2 years from now, 5 years from now, versus like, here's the pros and the cons list. It's a very different
Right.
way of clarifying what's important to you. That really helps to just provide that conviction.
And I just love that. That is might need to print that out. And
Shout out
myself, right?
to Quinta and
Right,
Abbott
exactly.
Elementary. Love that
Right.
show. Another aspect of this, though, that's so interesting is it's called single mother by choice. But what I've read and all the stats show, can most women in that situation ultimately would have preferred to parent with a partner. So what was dating like for you before your daughters were born?
New York is just fun. Let's just put it that way. But I will say that when I first moved up here, because I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina after college, and I had a boyfriend. And the plan was I move here first and then he was going to move. But the weekend that I was moving up here, I found out that he was cheating on me. And I was devastated. So
Oh my god.
it was horrible. Oh my gosh. Anyhow, we broke up, but that was just very difficult for me. And I felt like it just destroyed me in a way where I'm never going to allow someone to have that much power again. But I was really trying to pick up the pieces and figure out who I was. Here I am in a new city with a new job. And, I'm just trying to figure it out. So of course, what do you do in New York? You just have fun, right? And you date a lot. So in the very beginning, I met really good guys um that wanted to get serious. And I would be the runaway bride. I would run away from everyone that wanted to get serious because I knew that I'm broken. If I'm broken, there's no way that I can make myself happy.
Right.
So I just stayed single. And I worked on myself throughout this time.
Well, first of all, I it's absolutely devastating what you went through. And there is so much about what we go through in our early 20s that we do have to take the time to heal. And it's important to give ourselves the grace and the space to take that time back to do the work because so many times there's that pressure to just rush through the healing in order to maybe avoid being single later into life. But it's important, especially if you want to end up in a healthy relationship. Dating is definitely not easy, but maybe we could do a quick little game that will hopefully continue to help us get to know you and hopefully will be easier decisions than the dating game.
Right, right.
So this is Would You Rather. And we're just gonna like play a little game. We won't go too spicy, but it'll be a great way for us to continue to get to know you and get to know what it means to be a solo parent by choice.
Okay. I'm
Um,
ready.
awesome, awesome. Okay, so first one, would you rather random aunties or friends set you up on a date
Hmm.
or have them take the kids and babysit for a night?
No, definitely the latter. Definitely the latter. Anyone that wants to take the kids for a little time, so I have some alone time, definitely come. Call me.
I love it. I love it.
Please take the kids.
Well, hopefully they might do both, take the kids and set you up on a date, maybe.
Let me just see who they have in mind,
Okay. Oh,
first.
so
Let's vet
not
them
into the
first.
blind dates. I
I know.
see. Okay. So would you rather parent solo or co-parent with one of your past partners?
Oh, definitely solo. Definitely solo. I always preach like to my cousins, my younger cousins, like it is very important who you choose as your partner. I mean,
Yes.
they can either make or break the relationship. When you have a child that you're responsible for, everyone has their own way of thinking, their own way of upbringing, child rearing. There's a lot at stake. Those relationships that were in the past are in the past for a reason. And that's where they should stay. I mean,
Oh, yes.
I think I'd prefer, like, I'd rather maybe with a stranger that we will not have any connection to. But then that's basically what I did, right? It's already difficult what I'm doing now, and to add any type of emotional baggage or anything stressful that's external, it'd make it even more difficult. Like I can't even imagine.
Percent. And just like they say, rejection is redirection.
Exactly, and I have to admit that, like, sometimes I do think about the past and one of my best friends, she's always like, "Yeah, but it didn't work out for a reason. It did not work out for a reason, so, yeah, it might have been nice for a little bit of time, but then ultimately it would still, end." And I think that's the beauty of also having a true friend that's not afraid to tell you the truth because you know that it stems from love. This particular friend, after like the 150th failed relationship, up here. She and I, we took a trip to Grenada, and she's the one that I would always call and cry because either my heart was broken or I would realize, whoa, I really am single. What am I going to do? And we're in Grenada, and she was just saying the way that I was approaching dating was also very unhealthy because on the first date, I would ask the guy, "Hey, so do you want kids?" And it's like, it's the first date, Connie. You don't ask anyone that on the first date. But but my mindset was like, time is ticking. I need to make moves, like I need to know that we are aligned so we can just move forward. And she's like, but
Yeah.
that's not the type of relationship that you want. Like you said, Jamila, you want a healthy relationship. That's not healthy. So anyhow, she is the one, she said, if you want a baby, have your baby. Like you don't need to do it a traditional way. Just go have your baby. So,
Wow. I love that. I love that. Let's dive back into your decision and the process you were going through to really make a choice of what to do. You mentioned that this was around when you were 41.
mhm,
And I thought it was just super interesting some of the statistics around motherhood becoming very much something that is more accessible to older moms. The births to women age 40 and older has basically quadrupled over the last years or so. Births to women 35 to 39 has doubled and is now like 17% of all the births. So I think this is definitely something that is becoming a lot more common and accepted. But was there a moment as far as timing was concerned and the biology where you said, okay, this is now impossible to ignore. The urgency is here, and I need to really start thinking about the path of doing this on my own?
Well, for me, my dad had prostate cancer and it was pretty aggressive, stage 4. And the reality of there's a possibility that my unborn child would never meet their grandparent. That was like a reality. And it was by my choice per se, right? I mean, obviously I had met the person, but yeah, that was like the first aha, like, oh my gosh, I really need to think about this because again, as an only child, it's really important to me to continue the legacy, but Lexi needs to kind of know where they came from. So that is the first part. And then, again, my friend having that conversation in Grenada. So it just propelled me to move forward. Obviously, I also did more because I did freeze my eggs at age 38. So before all of this. And that to me, that was my insurance policy. I felt like, okay, that bought me some more time, even though I did it later in life at age 38. But by 40, AMH levels were going down, and those AMH just really shows you the number for your egg reserves, but it doesn't really tell you the quality of your eggs. So you have no idea, what state they're in. So I was like, okay, well, all these factors, it's time. It's
Yeah.
time.
Well, of course, illness could be such a moment of giving you like that clarity and understanding the importance of, we only have one life to live. So I'm glad that for the book, your dad recovered from
Yes.
that
Yes. Thank
um,
you.
illness and the cancer. So really, really grateful he's still with us and
Thank you. I
able to
appreciate.
be grandfather to your
Oh,
daughters.
yeah, definitely a huge part of their lives.
That's incredible. You talk a lot about empowering women with information in your book, and it's great how much detail you provide about the process. So, just now, you touched on your AMH levels, which can be measured through fertility testing. And you also mentioned freezing your eggs, which, for a lot of people, they may fear that it's too late to even
Mhm.
consider doing an egg freezing round. What were some of the surprising elements of the fertility process from an information perspective that you wish you had known and that you feel is really important for women who may be listening?
You know how they say like on the job training? It was like on the experience training or on the journey training. I don't know. So even with the egg freezing, like I mentioned in the book that I didn't even know that the egg freezing process is just like it is IVF. It's just at the end, they don't fertilize the egg. I had no idea. So I didn't know that I was going to be giving shots to myself. I didn't know anything. And so that's why I felt the importance of documenting my experience, just to give women a little footprint or a blueprint of what may potentially they may encounter. Obviously, especially with fertility, it's very uh, unique and individualized. So, you not go through the process like I did, but at least you have an idea of maybe what to expect. So that was the entire, reason of why I wrote the book and tried to be as detailed as possible with the medical.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about the different types of donors you could
Yes.
have, the
Yes.
different processes, IUI versus
Right.
IVF.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one aspect as well that a lot of people may not appreciate is that oftentimes it takes more than one try to
Yes.
ultimately have successful conception and then a successful pregnancy at that. Yeah, I'd be curious about your journey. And was there ever a moment where you thought this is too much? Like when you were on that second or third try even where you thought maybe I might not do it.
No, I never had that thought.
Mm,
I'm very type A, and so I was gonna get it done. Just didn't know
love
how
it.
long it was gonna take, but that is the $1,000,000 question, right? When I was purchasing the vials, I didn't know how many I should purchase. And, in my family, to my knowledge, there aren't any fertility issues. In fact, I think that's why my parents said, "Do not have kids," like while you're in high school, because it was so easy for us to have kids, So
Yeah.
to me, I'm thinking like, "Oh, now that I'm ready, it should be easy. I should be able to pop one out real quickly, right?" And no, that is not the case, which is why they say that it's a miracle when you are get pregnant, because all the stars have to align in order for it to happen. And like each time that it failed, I was just thinking like, what can we tweak for the next cycle? But it is extremely taxing on the body, on your emotions, and I think that for me, when I did the last round where I did end up pregnant, I was starting to believe that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant. I hadn't gotten to that thought of like, okay, I'm going to stop. It would be, okay, let me explore other options. But I hadn't gotten there yet because I was like, okay, let me just, I mean, I'm starting to lose faith and I'm going to go through this. But at that time when that last cycle, I was just going through the motions. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the emotional journey ups and down were just so clear in your book. How many tries was it? Just, for clarity for our listeners.
Sure. So I did one IUI with a partner, then I did 3 IUIs with the donor sperm. Then after that, I did a hybrid IVF. So that meant that we took some of my frozen eggs, thawed them, and then I tried to do an IVF of like a cycle. Unfortunately, with that cycle, my body did not respond to the IVF
Mm.
medication. So we had to go ahead and nix that. And we continued with the thawing of the eggs and fertilizing those. We transferred one, but it didn't take. And so then after that, at age 40, we did a fresh IVF cycle. And luckily, my body responded. And that is how I became pregnant. But I will say that this last cycle was very different because the first time when they transferred, I did something called PGS, which is pre-implantation genetic screening. And I just want to put it out there with a disclaimer. Believe it or not, I'm not saying don't do it. When the first time when they thawed my eggs and then fertilized in what became embryos, I had 5 embryos. And when I did the screening, I was thinking just the math. I was like, well, at least 1 will be normal. Well, 4 came back abnormal, and then 1 was inconclusive. And the one that I asked to transfer was the inconclusive one, because normally a doctor, when they see that their other, your embryo is abnormal, they will not transfer it. So I was devastated. And that night I was crying and bawling. And through my tears, I stumbled across an article on my iPad where it was talking about these doctors in New York City, where they were saying that, again, these tests are not 100%. And that the testing that takes place on these embryos, like, it's like 3 to 5 days, right? So if you give them more time, they may self correct because, like, when you're abnormal, it might be you have too many or too less chromosomes. But again, that's just a window of 3 to 5 days. So maybe if you give it longer, it might self correct. And so the second time when I did the fresh IVF, I declined the PGS and I said, I want the embryologist to do it old school. So old school meaning look in the microscope, use morphology, which is just looking at the cells, looking at the cell structure, look at the symmetry, and rank them in order. And that's what they did. I had 5 embryos again, and they ranked them. And then at this time, the doctor was like, well, you've been doing this for a while now. It's been, it takes a lot of emotional energy and finances. Do you want to transfer too? So
Wow.
that's what we did.
Wow. Well, again, it touches on the importance of empowering yourself with information.
Yeah.
And it sounds like how coming across that article really gave you a new perspective.
The way the article was, well, the way that it panned out, there may be a lot of embryos being discarded. And let me just tell you firsthand experience how difficult it is to create an embryo. So
Mhm.
just to think that all my hard work is just thrown away just like that when it takes so long, so much energy, so much of my finances to get them. And then it's like, oh, just because they test and it's abnormal, again, they may be abnormal for a reason. But, again, there are tests that you can take, when you're actually pregnant, like amnio, if you want, if you're concerned. Um, there are tests that you can do later, but I mean, I'm just like, it's hard work and it's just being discarded just like that. And it's pretty devastating.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, nothing's guaranteed, as you said,
Exactly.
throughout the entire process. And so picking those moments of when to, take the bigger risk versus to be conservative, it feels like there's so many different decisions that you had to make. And that also in and of itself is its own toll because you feel like
Hmm.
it's all on you to make
It
each
is,
one of
yes.
these choices.
Yes.
You can't point to anyone else.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's all me.
Yeah.
To be responsible for my choices.
Yeah. Well, you touched on the financial aspect, and I know that this is a huge component of, women's considerations when they're thinking about potentially this might be their path. Yeah, I just want to hear from you about the path that you took to financially preparing for going down the path of becoming a single mother by choice. And let's first focus on the cost itself of becoming pregnant. And of course, there's the cost of raising two
Right,
beautiful
right,
girls,
right,
right?
right, yes.
Yeah. How did you go about financially preparing or at least assessing just how much this might cost?
Right. Well, insurance, I mean, it doesn't cover really anything, like, especially with the egg freezing. So I remember at that time when I was freezing my eggs, I first started at this prestigious clinic and in Manhattan, and they were charging $10,000 per cycle. Now, the cycle, meaning if they only get 1 egg or no eggs or 15 eggs, um, that's it. And that didn't include medication or storage for that matter. So if you wanted to do it again, that's another 10,000. So I had saved my money, so I had savings for that. But I was just like, you know what? Let me do a little bit more research and let me see. Now, obviously, you want to make sure you still have quality in your healthcare, right? But I went ahead and I found this startup where they were offering like a little promotion. It was either you get up to 4 cycles or 12 eggs, whichever comes first. And I was just thinking, okay, that kind of hedges everything a little bit. And but like I said, you don't want to, you want to make sure the quality is there. So I went back to the prestigious clinic and I asked my doctor, what makes them different from this particular clinic? And I'm so glad she was very honest with me. And she said, nothing. Those doctors came from here. And I was like, oh, well, I'm out.
It's clear.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like I said, I had savings and I used my savings for it. And then obviously trying to become pregnant. That was again, the IVF. I did use insurance and there were so many nuances with that as well that I illustrate in the book. which I feel like with insurance, you need to have that's a degree within itself. Like you need to take a class and a course just to understand how everything works with insurance.
Right.
But I did have an advocate there and she helped me
Good.
immensely. So, again, for me, I know don't ever be afraid of asking questions. Don't ever be just because quote, like they say, old school closed mouths don't get fed. You don't know. And it's not ever a dumb question because if you don't ask it, I mean, there could be a possibility of a solution or an alternative, right? But you
Right.
won't know unless you ask.
Oh, that's so true. One, I'm thinking drop the course link. Connie, you figured it
Oh,
out.
no, no, I did not figure it out, but I had so many conversations and asking questions. Like I said, even asking, I felt embarrassed asking her because, this is like a prestigious clinic. And I'm like, I thought she was going to go into like, well, we do a lot of research and blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, I don't know, am I even worthy to ask that question? Obviously, they have the name, right? But it's my money. It's my money. And I deserve to ask what makes them do. I want to know why should I come to you guys instead of going to them?
Right.
And we should never be afraid to ask those questions because it is your body and it is your
Right. Well, again, talking about the somewhat the financial piece, but I could imagine the moment you actually found out that the two implanted embryos were healthy and that you were pregnant with twins was probably a little bit shocking. Tell me about those emotions that came up.
so
When
yeah.
that happened.
Yes. Well, it was funny because when the doctor approached me about implanting too, I don't know if you ever go through your fertility journey. The fertility doctor are all about stats. And those stats at the end, when they go through the statistics, at the end, you're kind of like, why am I even doing this? Because it is very kinda like negative, so when he was telling me, "Oh, well," his thought process about the 2, he was like, "Well, we've been doing this and, the likelihood of both, taking is like less than 1%. And then, all we really want is just 1, but then that's like the percentage of that is like maybe less than 5% and da da da." So you're like, "So then why are we doing this?" But what I loved about him is that he always ended on a positive note and he would say, but it only takes 1. So the clinic and was like, hey, I'm spotting. So I really don't want to come in to get the test. Like I'm not pregnant. And the director of clinical operations was like, I get what you're saying, but you know what? Let's just have you come in for data gathering, And I was like, that's the magic word because we need to know what to tweak next month, right? And so I was so irritated going in. I was like, I was
Yeah.
cursing the whole way, came home. I was so irritated. I went for a run and then I came back, took a shower, and then the phone rang. And that's when the director called and was like, oh my gosh, you're pregnant. And I was just like, first, it was like a relief. Whoa, I can get pregnant. Right. And then I was like, oh, then it's the joy. It moved on to joy. And then she was like, well, your HCG levels are so high that there's a possibility that they're twins. And I was like, oh no, like wait, the doctor said less than 1%. Like, how did this happen? Because again, financially, I'm just thinking about one child. One child was already going to be a lot, right? So I'm thinking, how in tarnation am I going to support 2 kids? Like, really, I'm not there. So what do I do? And it definitely transformed into like anxiety of like, what do I need to do to prepare for 2 kids? So
Right.
and I'm still going through it. The financial anxiety of like, oh my gosh, okay, how am I going to do this? Just everything. But
Yeah.
it was definitely the a range of emotions from again the relief to joy to then anxiety of like, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Oh my goodness. Well, I can't even imagine, but I'm sure just about any parent of multiples kind of has that moment of,
Right, right. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
there aren't as many economies of scale when it comes to having multiples. Like you
Yes.
think it would scale easily, but my sisters are twins,
Oh, yes.
and I they're much younger than me, so I saw them what coming up, and yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
literally just double of it.
Now I just
Um,
ask, do you have like a twin discount or like a
yeah.
multiple discount? Like anything.
Exactly. You've of course alluded to the fact now that as part of your village, your parents did eventually come around and were a part of supporting you in the end. Could you talk about like that transition from their initial reactions to maybe some of those key moments where you started to see them changing their perspective?
Yeah, so my mom, well, I had kind of broached the subject way before I actually did it. And she had told me from that moment that she would never support me and that I should not ask her for help if I ever do decide to, walk that path. So when I did become pregnant, she was just like, okay. Like no excitement. No. In fact, she said, I feel sorry for your kids because you've denied them of a father. That's what she
Wow.
said to me. I was like, "Oh,
Wow.
well, families come in different shapes and sizes and, ways. But, all I can do is, know that I will do my best."
Right.
And then my dad, obviously, like I said, didn't want to know anything. So I would talk to him on the phone and I would say, "Hey, I just had a doctor's appointment." And he would say, "So how's the weather out there?" And I'm like, "Okay. All right. I guess you don't want to know anything about these kids." Now, I decided when I was about like, I think 4 or 5 months pregnant, to go to Taiwan. And, my mom goes back and forth. And so she was in Taiwan at the time. And I guess when she saw me pregnant, it just changed everything. She took back everything she said. I mean, didn't say it like that, obviously, because how can she? But she did ask me if I wanted her to come, and be with me. And did I want her to come and help before the girls came. So she came 3 months before and stayed 3 months after to help.
Wow.
And then my dad wasn't until it was June when they were born. So it was around Father's Day. And I didn't have time to buy a gift. I only was able to get a card that was like Happy Father's Day. And then I mentioned him being a grandfather. And so I called him on Father's Day and just said, "Hey, sorry, no gift, but I got you the card." And he was like, It's okay." He was like, "You've already given me the best gift." So from then he was on board. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, it does go to show like ultimately this is such a deeply human experience. And in the face of, new life being brought into the world, it's hard to keep that icy exterior probably. So I'm so glad that they came around and that they actually gave you that, clear validation in
Yes.
the end. Because to your point, I think also sometimes parents can just like not acknowledge
Yes.
that things have
Absolutely. Yes.
changed or
Right.
something.
Right. 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 Right.
Yeah, yeah. But to hear those words must have meant so much.
Yes. I mean, I did. I did cry.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Um, well, part of navigating that anxiety and part of the part that just really warmed my heart reading your book was so many moving stories of how your friends, you call them sisters,
Yes.
and even your coworkers, honestly. I know you mentioned the
Yes.
anxiety you had about that initially. They really showed up for you in this process from trying to conceive to your pregnancy to, of course, post your daughter's arriving. Did that surprise you? And were there moments that did feel lonely, even when you had people who were ready to step up and help you?
So I will say that I was not surprised. I think that I call on my sisters and they are. So I had no doubt they would have my back. I mean, it was funny because, it wasn't my baby. I mean, it became our babies, and it was really beautiful to see. But did I get lonely? Absolutely. And I think that those moments come like, at night when you're by yourself and you're in the dark and your mind and your thoughts are starting to just wander and you're just like, "Oh my gosh, like how did I get here? And, is this the right thing to do? Well, it's a little too late, Connie. This is what's going to happen." And, even while I was pregnant and I moved into my new home, I was telling one of them, I was just like, "Oh my gosh. I mean, it's so quiet and it's a little scary to me, like I can't believe I'm here by myself." And her response was, because she has a child, she was like, "You better enjoy this peace and quiet right now because this is the last time you're gonna get it." And she is so right.
Right.
Right? So, but, yeah, I mean, just to be totally honest, yeah, there are moments and still are moments where I feel lonely.
Hmm.
Even
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know also, I have a Caribbean background as well, and you've mentioned your heritage, Taiwanese and Black, and I think there's often a challenge for the ways we were raised of being self sufficient.
Yes.
versus coming into moments where we actually truly need to ask for help. Like there is no
Yes.
option. You
Yes.
must. So talk about that. Like either the first time you told a friend that you were going on this journey or the first time you had to ask them to really do something for you. Like, how did that feel to have to lean on other people?
Very difficult because like you said, like that's I am one, I will figure it out myself and I will do everything myself, which is probably why I had these kids by myself. But what you realize is that when they say that it takes a village, it really does because there's just no way that you can do it by yourself. And I think that when they were born and they were not sleeping, like my dad told me in the very beginning when before I had the kids, again, like I said, he was not supportive. He told me, he was like, "You're not going to be able to do it." And I was like, "What do you mean? You raised me to be this very strong, independent woman, like I don't understand." He was like, "Well, you love your sleep too much." And I was like, "Yes, I know, but I know for the first 3 months, they probably won't sleep. So I figured I can do this for okay, 5.5 years later, I'm still not getting any sleep. It really is difficult. But when they were like, infants, especially when I came back from the hospital, it was very difficult because I would like wake up one. I didn't do the tandem feeding. So I would wake up one, I would breastfeed and then burp, change diapers, put her to sleep. And then I would, go on to the next one and do the same thing all over. Then after that, I would pump one, pump the second one, second breast. And then after that, I would sleep for like 30 minutes and I would get up to do it all over again. Well, as I got older, on baby A was just not a good sleeper and she would wake up a lot. And I was so sleep deprived. I was extremely sleep deprived and like I could feel like myself breaking. Obviously you don't condone, when you hear about mothers, what they do to their kids, but you can understand and have empathy of why they do it because it is exhausting and you get to a place where you're like, I just want them to stop crying or I'm breaking. I am breaking down, But you try to push through. And then when I would see daylight, I'm like, okay, it's a new day. I can get through it. But there was one night I was like, you know what? If I don't ask for help, like, I don't know what I'm capable of. Right. I mean, just to be
Wow.
very honest, because you're just there. So there was one night I was like, just send the text. And that's what I did. I sent the text and then it was like, she rang the alarm.
Yeah.
Everybody came and was like, "Okay, here we are." And because it's COVID, like I didn't really know, we didn't know much about the virus. So, you're trying to protect these two little babies, but you're trying to protect yourself. So I didn't want people to be in my house because you didn't really know if they were social
Right.
distancing or anything. So it was difficult. It was difficult. But you definitely have to ask. And it was very difficult for me to, send the text. And
Yeah.
even sometime after that, it was very difficult. But I will say in the last probably year, I have perfected it. I
Mm.
don't hesitate to ask now because I understand that friends truly want to help, but they don't know unless you say something. And you have to be very specific about what it is that you need help with. So,
Right.
and it's okay. And it's okay to ask. It doesn't mean that you're any less, strong. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means that you know your limits and you know how to ask for help.
Yeah. Oh, that's so powerful and so important for, people stepping out into their own truth and knowing that's honestly part of the platform of these conversations that we're having to showcase, even though you're doing something that may seem unpopular, finding your tribe and then reaching out is really going to be so important to not feeling isolated and having that support to make it through. So I love that reminder. So
Yes.
you sent the SOS text. Like, what did they do? Did they got your hotel room and
They
they
did
like,
actually.
yeah,
So they came in and, at the time they were like, "You know what? Connie, you need to go get the vaccine." Two of my friends that night kicked me out the house and they got me a hotel and, I was able to get some sleep, but it was so funny. I was like, it's so ironic. These little kids, they try to act like I'm just lying because that night I was like, okay, so how did it go? And they were like, they slept the whole night. Like, what do you,
of
I said,
course.
of course they did. Of course. Right. Like,
I love.
I remember, I had a hard time last year in the beginning. I think that in our community, we don't talk about mental health enough. Right. And a lot of times, they'll just say, people say, well, just pray about it, and yes, I do pray about it. But but sometimes we need more help than just praying about it. We need some professional help, some professional guidance, and then sometimes medication. I was having a very, very difficult time and I didn't ask for help. And my one really great college friend who lives in Virginia, she was like, she just felt it. And she was like, Connie, I'm driving up. I'm about to take these girls and, you need to handle yourself. And she drove up 5 hours, got the kids, and drove back 5 hours, to
Wow.
Virginia. And then when it was time to return them, she drove back up 5 hours and went back. And I was just like, wow. And that allowed me time to really just take medication. It got to the point where, I thought that panic attacks and anxiety attacks were like on TV. They're portrayed as I need to, breathe into a paper bag, what have you. But I was starting to get, my body was trying to tell me stuff. And I didn't really understand that, like my all of a sudden breaking out in cold sweats or feeling nauseous or feeling like I'm about to vomit was panic attacks. And I tried all the like, as I like to do research. So I did all the like the breathing techniques. I had like doing reflexology all over my body, like, okay, calm down, calm down. But no, I just, I needed medication and
Yeah.
I started medication.
Thank you so much for sharing that because, again, I do think part of this journey of, helping people understand what it means to be a single mother by choice is to also show it doesn't literally mean single. You have the village, you have
Yes.
your medical care, mental health care. These are all part of the ecosystem you need to build around yourself. And so, so proud of you and so glad
Thank
you're
you.
you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Well, clearly this has been such a powerful journey for you. You've been incredibly thoughtful throughout all that research and problem solving. First of all, I'm like, I want to work on your team because clearly the way you go about things.
And anytime you have any questions, let me know.
But, even with all of that kind of research and thoughtfulness, is there anything that you look back on and feel like you would do differently?
I would have asked for help earlier.
Mm,
Yeah. And maybe even have
yeah.
done the whole journey even earlier too, because I am tired. Before kids, I was you know, I was a runner, I was a cyclist. I took care of myself physically and I tried to eat healthy. And so I just thought that I was good, right? This is like a whole nother type of exhaustion and fatigue. And so maybe if I was a little bit younger, maybe it would be a little bit easier. So ask for help earlier and maybe I've done the whole thing a little earlier when I was a little younger.
Yeah. No, I love that call out. I feel like people feel like they have to give it the good college try on finding a partner. You won't give yourself permission to go this path
Right.
until you hit a certain age, basically. So calling out, you can choose this at whatever age is right for you.
Exactly, because it doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you can't meet your partner, you still can, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Again, families come in different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if I may ask, I'd be curious how you've experienced dating since having your daughters.
It's so funny because now I ask the opposite question, I'm like, I still ask, "Do you want kids?"
Want the other answer.
The other answer now, like, because I'm not having anymore. So it's so
Right.
funny because now that I have kids, these men are looking for someone that wants to have kids. And I'm like, where were you years ago when I was looking for this?
Right.
It's so
Right.
ironic, right? But the blessing and the beauty is that now I really take my time. I want a healthy, reciprocal relationship. And I am not going to take anything less. I am very quick to figure out like if this is going to work or if it's not, and I am quick to make decisions of like we just need to go separate ways. And
Love
I
that.
love that about myself now, like the maturity and just to know my worth.
Yes. I love that there's growth after you've made a big decision like this. It impacts the way you move through the world on
Hmm.
all your decisions afterwards.
So
So, what would you say to someone who's listening and maybe feeling kind of maybe regret about their current situation? They're not partnered, they're, not sure about what's ahead and maybe feeling like it is a little too late. Well,
I would say it's never too late to pursue your deepest desires, right? If having a baby is something that you do want, obviously do your research and make sure you are financially, mentally, physically prepared, and ready for that, go for it. Like I was just talking about how families come in different ways. There are many paths to motherhood. I mean, I
Right.
use donor sperm. There's also donor eggs, surrogacy, foster care, adoption. And you just have to realize that each one, it leads to the same profound destination. It's becoming a mother. And it doesn't make you any less because being a mom is being a mom.
So maybe our last question, what would you want to say to the haters, the people who maybe judge becoming a single mother by choice without understanding the reality behind it?
The one thing that I would say is that sometimes you meet a mother who is married, but maybe their husband works a lot or works at night or what have you. And they're like, it's almost like I am a single mom. No, you're not. You're not. You still have someone that you have to make a choice with. You can talk about milestones or what you should do regarding your child. You still have a partner. But being a single mother by choice, I make all the decisions. And again, I'm responsible for the decisions I make. And it is just me. So there's nobody that helps me. I don't have a partner that I can say, you know what, babe, I just need a moment to myself, watch these kids. I give all respect to, moms that are single, either by consequence or by choice. It is very, very difficult, you know.
100%.
Yeah.
No, well, thank you so much, Connie. You shared so much wonderful information, your transparency, the heart and bravery you poured into this decision, but also into building the life that you really wanted are just so inspiring. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamila. I hope that, women that are listening will be inspired. And if you have any questions, I do have TikTok and Instagram. The handles for both are searching for tadpoles at searching for tadpoles. And then I also have my website, ConnieRutherford.com. So you can reach out if you have any questions. I'm here to support.
Amazing. And buy the book, y'all. Again, there's so much rich information in there about the process and just the incredible storytelling of Connie's journey. So,
Thank
yeah, I hope
you.
you guys will go out and buy it.
Thank you so much.
When it came to choosing to be a single mother by choice, Connie wasn't fearless. She was honest and learned what it really means when they say it takes a village. Remember, choosing differently doesn't mean you're doing life wrong. It means you're doing life authentically. Be sure to subscribe to Unpopular Decisions wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if this episode stuck with you, leave us a review or share it with someone who might get something from it. Because when one person chooses differently, it opens the door to a million more brave choices. Thanks so much for listening. I'm glad you're here.